What is anthropology? Well, Marvin Harris says anthropology is the study of humanity, of the ancient and modern people, and their ways of life. It's hard to think in what was the exact origin of anthropology, as since ancient times, different groups of people have been questioning themselves about the different traditions of other cultures. There are several tales where travelers describe customs, characters, religions, and the structure of different social groups, even when anthropology didn't exist as a science. Due to this, we can understand that it has been an important characteristic of human beings, the capacity to question and highlight the cultural, social, biological, and physical difference. Anthropology can be defined as the science devoted to the study of the ancient and modern human beings and their lifestyles. According to Harris 2004, given the range and complexity of the subject, the different branches of anthropology focus on different aspects or dimensions of human experience. Thus, anthropology is enriched by contributions from various disciplines and goes beyond them. This is where you can recognize the characteristics of anthropology by gathering all aspects of a human group, that is, holistic perspective, and comparing them with those of other groups, that is, comparative perspective. It seeks an explanation by contrasting both the characteristics they have in common and those that make them different from each other.
Anthropology as a science and its subdisciplines. Physical anthropology. It studies the physical characteristics of humans through fossils found and the distinctive features of contemporary groups. Archaeology. It is devoted to the study of material remains of past cultures by reconstructing extinct forms of life. Anthropological linguistics. It studies the diversity of languages spoken by the existing human groups, attempts to reconstruct the history of their origin, the relationship between their language, and the development of the groups that speak it. Cultural anthropology, also known as social anthropology, it refers to the analysis and description of cultures both from the past and from human groups of today.
History, theories, and precursors in anthropology. The beginnings of anthropology are hard to know, but most of the scientists give more importance to the documentation of the conquest of new political and commercial territories by the Greeks, the Romans in classical antiquity, and the Spaniard trips in the mid 16th century in America. The development of anthropology can be divided in three stages. 1. Description of other cultures and a reflection on the transformation of their practices, which took place in the second half of the 16th century. 2. Search for scientific laws of evolution of societies and their institutions, which began in the last third of the 19th century. And 3. Search for scientific laws of the functioning of societies from divergent approaches, which took place in the last third of the 20th century.
Well, I am going to give information about three anthropological theories. Well, the evolutionist school argues that the societies shall pass through states of development. In that way, they could be able to place in some of them. The work of the social scientists is to discover and present the stages that span all cultures to reach the highest level of development, generally associated with the European societies of that time. For example, one of the most important authors of this current is the British Edward B. Taylor, author of the first textbook of general anthropology. He proposed to explain the evolution of human societies by passing through various stages to reach a developed or superior stage. Now, the historical particularism. The next school emerges as a reaction to the prevailing evolutionary ideas, arguing that they were based on insufficient empirical evidence. In other words, every culture or society is a consequence of its own particular process, which result of the sum of the aspects who have been built through the pass of time. And finally, my next example is the diffusionism. This current also emerges as a reaction to evolutionism and proposes that cultures adopted the elements by imitation. For example, the Egyptian culture is one of the diffuser centers, and the Aztecs and Incas resumed their knowledge from it. As the name says it, the cultural characteristics were diffused from one society to another by the voluntary or involuntary contact. It causes that several societies share language, ideology, ways of think, religion, economy, among other elements.
Functionalism. The emphasis of this British trend is on function. The duty of the anthropologist is to describe the functions of customs and institutions for the society studied, the means by which we come to understand their origins. Functionalism has a strong influence on the social sciences. A very clear analogy that explains the system is the comparison between biological organism and social system. This position supports how it's possible to study an organism through its physiology and morphology. Neovolutism. After the Second World War, Morgan's works are re-examined and his contributions to the science of culture are risked. The existence of a cultural evolution determined by the amount of energy that could be captured and put into execution by the person and include the influence of the natural environment with cultural factors. French structuralism uses an analogy to explain the origin of the difference and similarities between cultures. A contribution of this current is a tendency of the human mind to think in binary terms after the Second World War. Anthropologists gradually move away from societies remote and begin to study more and more contemporary societies in which colonialism has a great influence and which are immersed in world system.
I'm gonna explain the key concepts through a story, but some of them are a little bit self-explanatory by themselves. Like men, we also have society that is a group of people who lives according to certain form of behavior, but it's also understood as the gathering of people or nations that coexist and are related by common laws. The next point is a state, that is a political unit with an independent government and a centralized organization, and it's composed of all the political and administrative institutions that control a defined territory. We have otherness, that is a relationship with beings that suggest the notion of other as interpersonal phenomena, and this is the case of many immigrants. We have acculturation, that is the exchange of cultural features, a result of continuous direct contact between two groups. We have enculturation, that is the learning process of the culture to which all human beings are exposed. We have affinity, that is the set of relationship that links two groups through marriage. Next, we have polygyny, that is the practices where a male person lives and has sexual relationship with several women simultaneously. Next is ethnocentrism, that refers to judging other cultures using our own cultural standards. We have ego, that is the individual who is central and starting point, and this marks the origin of a specific genealogy and set the name of remaining relatives. And the last key point is empathy, that is to understand the other person's perspective.